an illusion. That is the script I have bought, sold, and exchanged. I bought into an illusion of whiteness the outside world wrote of who I am, a world that does not acknowledge my heritage or authenticity. I've lived two lives. The first life, a white life. The other, in color. This first life, dull and ill-fitting, bound me to expectations I could never reach. I thought I could think myself into being white. I thought if I ignored every aspect of my blackness, I could avoid the pain I saw my mother experience at the expense of her blackness. To avoid pain, I lived an illusion, a white life. Now, this was a difficult facade to maintain. I was a smart kid, and I could recognize when others perceived my difference, my racial difference. Allow me to paint a picture. Recess, kindergarten. I'm outside with my classmates, the Georgia sun high above our small, bobbing heads, our minds consumed by an intense game of tag. Running over wood chips, a rainbow of brown tones, we scramble at any sight of the infamous tagger. You see, the tagger has power. They have the power to mark another, designating them as the weakest link. Or at least that's the incredibly dramatic interpretation my 6-year-old mind took. I ran as fast as my skinny legs would go, hopping over obstacles, my eyes keen for any sense of danger within my safe bubble. I spot the tagger and I take off running, eager to get as far away from being marked as possible. But I wasn't fast enough. The tagger tags me, and before I have the chance to redeem myself, the bell for recess sounds. I had been marked. Now, it wasn't the game of tag that stuck with me, but what the tagger said to me as we walked back to the school doors. He asked why my hair looked like that, pointing at my arms and hair. I was stunned by the question. I'm different? I knew my hair wasn't blonde like his, nor my skin pale like his, but I thought we were playing tag together. I thought that was enough. It was at this moment I could first articulate a memory where I felt my racial difference, specifically from the other white kids. I remember later in the year staying the night at my friend's house. Our black mothers chatted off in the kitchen as we went to the bathroom to do our hair. She showed me how she would wet her hair and then detangle, brushing a comb right through her looser curls. I, of course, tried to do the same, but the brush stopped short, and I came away frustrated. How could it be that even when I'm with someone whose interracial parents look like mine, I am still different? It was this difference that drove my childlike mind into a fervor, and the illusion was born. This illusion fully manifested in late elementary school at my third move, this time to Germany. I was at an overwhelmingly white American school, and although I had a surprisingly diverse group of friends considering the environment, I had taken that illusionary script of whiteness and tucked it away in my back pocket. I thought if I wore the same Justice sweatpants, hid my curls in a low bun, and listened to Justin Bieber and One Direction obsessively, I would be like the other white girls. I attributed likeness and sameness with community. And when you move around often, community becomes a craving. I thirsted for any semblance of belonging, and it drove my every action. It was tiring, and I wish there was a way around it, but I was exhausted of conforming to a rigid script of whiteness. But I continued. I maintained this illusion. And I was able to maintain this illusion for two main reasons. One, being willfully ignorant. I didn't want to think otherwise or to consider what my mixed Black identity means. More importantly, my light skin privileged me to avoid any meaningful dialogues about my melanin. My Blackness is often attributed as racial ambiguity, or when someone can't easily identify your ethnicity. That translates to a lot of "what are yous?" and confused stares at first greetings. I use this racial ambiguity as a cloak for me to hide under, the perfect shroud to maintain my illusionary script of whiteness I'd neatly hidden away. Even when talking with my mother, the person I love and trust most in the world, I maintained this illusionary script and hid behind it, detaching myself from any conversations of race. I lived that maintenance of the illusion for a long time. All of those dialogues bubbled to the surface when I came to college, and I was craving a community. I thought I could find it through spirituality. I liked the idea of meditation. I had watched some YouTube videos of yoga. I thought I knew something about it. And that's the community I wanted to find at Georgetown, something spiritual. It was in this mindset that I applied to the Black Interfaith Fellowship. I was tired of conforming to my rigid script of whiteness, even though I didn't have the language yet to know. I repressed every comment of Oreo, a Black person posing as white. Any comments about my skin or hair, pushing every pang of difference to the margins of my idealized script. Now, it wasn't by choice that I broke this illusion. On a whim, I filled out an application for the inaugural Black Interfaith Fellowship, mainly because it paid $20 an hour. By this time, I identified closely with Hinduism and a connected yoga practice, and I was excited. But on our first day of reflection, I sat uncomfortably in a room of 6 other Black people. My inner white girl shouted at me, "Why did you sign up for this? Why did you think it was a good idea? You are not going to speak." I sat silently, and afterwards, our facilitator, Reverend Grisham, pulled me aside. Her warm presence instantly put me at ease, and I released the sigh I had been holding on to. She was compassionately honest, pondering why I sat silently in the reflection space. I felt the tears begin to rise in my chest. She caringly recalled our interview for the fellowship, where I talked about Blackness as something outside of me, rather than as a part of my identity. She paused often, giving me room to breathe in the silence. And then her honesty came forth full force. She was blunt. If I were to participate fully in the fellowship, I had to confront the rigid script of whiteness I had written for myself, tucked away, written in an ink between the lines of ignorance and denial. I had to own my Blackness, I had to be free. As you could imagine, I cried slobbery tears, standing awkwardly as I watched my imaginary life fall apart. Am I a Black woman? It was through yoga that I was able to begin to unwrite the wrong of living this illusionary life. Prior to Georgetown, I had limited experience with yoga. I had watched some YouTube videos and had a whopping 2 sessions under my belt from Gold's Gym. When I heard the word yoga, I instantly associated it with workout and brunch, which implicitly wrote white and wealthy next to it. It wasn't a practice I spiritually resonated with. That is, until I came to Georgetown, and under the tutelage of Brahmachari Sharan, the head of Dharmic life on campus, I was exposed to a decolonized yoga. So yoga is actually an ancient philosophy indigenous to India through which folks wanted to find a way to live mindfully. That combination of meditation in everyday life coupled with somatic movement drew me in. I was hooked. However, all of my teachers were Southeast Asian. I craved a spiritual community that could speak to my experience living as a mixed Black woman. It was at this point that a fellow Black yogi, Romaine, introduced me to a yoga studio that created an earthquake within my notions of yoga: Spiritual Essence. Spiritual Essence Yoga is a yoga studio and practice created by a Black woman, Dana A. Smith, who felt isolated in predominantly white yogi spaces. Her experience in yoga, just as mine had been in life, was one of separation. It seemed like the perfect place for me to connect with my Blackness spiritually. And in January, I was presented the opportunity to combine an activity I loved, teaching, with yoga. Georgetown's campus ministry paid for me to take Spiritual Essence's 40-hour yoga teacher training. On our first day, I was stunned. There were Black folks of all shades, bodies, and ages walking the halls. Colorful head wraps and crystals adorned all of the folks who moved like poetry around the studio. A sight I thought only existed in my imagination. Blackness can look like this. It can feel like belonging. It was entirely new to me, and I quickly found myself cocooned by their warm embrace, existing fully within my identities as a mixed Black queer woman. As we moved from asana, yoga position, to asana, we wrote away any preconceived notions we held about ourselves. Our bodies became pens as we bent and curved our limbs into new stories, deciding who we wanted to become through every asana. This process of writing and unwriting brought an indescribable sparkle to all of our beings. This sparkle, I've come to realize, is what is often called Black girl magic. Black girl magic is only discoverable once you unwind and release yourself from that stifling ink of conceived whiteness that I held so tightly to. I now invite you to bask in this Black girl magic alongside me. Because Black girl magic is a magic I never touched as a girl. The glow, the walk, the voice, an unattainable dream to my young doe eyes. She wanted belonging. Her Tinkerbells whisk her away, but without fairy dust, she stayed grounded. confined only to dream of this distant fantasy. Black girl magic is a magic I've touched, I've basked in, I belong to. Black girl magic is in the dazzle of her voice as she reads. It is in her graceful command of presence when she walks into the room. Black girl magic is in their soft mannerisms and thundering calm. It is in her hands as she sips her morning tea. It is in their hair as it changes mood day to day. Black girl magic is in her laugh, infectious yet centered. It is in her meditation, stillness found in a lone breath. It is in our communal knowing, a glance worth 1,000 words. Unspoken yet binding, a contract of sisterhood we signed on to eons ago. Black girl magic paints our memories, a motherly morning usher to the bathroom as children attempt to detangle their curls, combing through misunderstood differences from the outside world, protected momentarily by the loving magic you wove into each and every brush. Black girl magic exists within each and every Black woman, but it is only found when we discover that sparkle in another. Iridescent beings that were destined to find one another, to stand with one another as we sprinkle our fairy dust upon the world, to change tides, to change minds, to change our ever-insistent confines and exist within our liberation, our fantastical journey, basking in our fairy dust, Black girl magic. It was through yoga that I was able to find this ink, Black girl magic, to begin to write my new story that fully embraces all of my identities. But it has not been a linear journey. There's an enormous amount of internalized racism I'm also having to unwrite. It's not comfortable and it's not easy, and I still feel separation from a lot of my communities. However, my identity is an ongoing process. And through this process, I am finding that I no longer have to write in that stifling ink of conceived whiteness. I can leave this rigid script of whiteness to the past. Day by day, asana by asana, I now work to embrace my sparkling melanated ink as I welcome my full spectrum of identities, Blackness and all, in every pen stroke. Thank you.